Welcome everyone to this week's Bits Tonight show, live here out of Berlin. Just waiting a minute or two for some people to actually join as usual. And then we start in a minute or two. And if you have any better means to pre-announce these live streams, let me know as well, because right now this YouTube notification system is not the best pre-announcement here of the live streams. And as usual, we will discuss this week's newsworthy or in general stuff we noticed during the busy week of IT work here. And as usual, we hope you enjoy to discuss the latest developments here together with us. And we have already the first people joining. Welcome everyone. Still testing the time as usual as well to find out what time works best. So far the common announcement of comment was mostly from people for any kind of nighttime at the weekend work. So let's see how many people tune in today and if our Broadcom TG3 Ethernet driver survives today. So let's start before we have so much pre-recorded video on the on-demand archive. First, and as usual, even if it's German news site, I will just translate. Shouldn't matter too much anyway, as we will mostly talk about it. So Crytek announced Raytracing for Radeon Vega 56. Not really sure why they specifically mention here Vega 56. Certainly works for other Vega like 64 and Radeon 7 as well, but whatever. So point is, of course, as most gamers of you know, ray tracing is a new big thing there, mostly maybe pushed by Nvidia. And so far this is a special feature of Nvidia RTX cards. And the big news is now that AMD also has a solution for that. And apparently Crytek demoed this here, ray tracing demo, and with voxel-based global illumination. And of course, newsworthy is also that this Vega 56 card currently starts at 300 euros in contrast to other Nvidia offerings. But in general, it's of course nice to see that AMD has a solution for this, especially if they want to make market share in the gaming market, where, as we all know, most gamers currently prefer Nvidia for the gaming performance and such. So AMD obviously needs to have a solution there. And this is certainly nice to see, especially when we come to another news, the next news. And by the way, today I tried to keep it slightly more brief and not have a 2-hour news discussion. But as usual, if you have comments, and actually not to show these advertisements, still need to learn to install an ad blocker. And especially when we come to the next news, unfortunately, also from a German side, but again, you can ignore that for that part. So the really sad news, and by the way, this news was pointed out to me by my brother. Very nice of him, because otherwise I would have missed this. And this news here is really sad, especially for me, as we are here such fans of AMD. The graphic card market share for AMD decreased by 40%, which is of course massive, or maybe even no, let's need to check here the details. And this is of course really sad. However, this is partially expected, because as we will see if we take a look here on the news, this is actually related to crypto mining. When we read here that this mostly decreased, so let's see, dedicated graphic cards for the fourth quarter of 2018 vastly decreased, and by 40.2%, and to the previous quarter by 10%, 10.7%. And this is here particularly newsworthy in the market here of crypto mining stuff. I think they mentioned here, yeah, the demand for mining related gear is vastly decreased, which, as you know from my other videos and live streams and such, that I'm not the greatest fan of this environmental pollution of crypto mining to start with. So from that angle, that is not too sad to see. However, of course, as we rely here on AMD for the higher performance higher performance open source solutions, it's of course not really good for us to see this market share decrease. Of course, as far as I read, and the longer we will do this IT news show, the more we will learn about the details, because certainly since I do this, I pay much more attention to all the details. But from the top of my head, I think I remember too that AMD has increasing market share since the introduction of the Zen architecture, the Ryzen, Threadripper and EPYC processor lines. So I hope they gain enough market share and sales numbers in the CPU space that they can somehow factor this in, but in general, of course, not really good. Let's see the last note. Was this purely for AMD or in, by the way, are we okay? 0 drop frames. That's it, our beloved TG3 driver crashes again. In the third quarter, was AMD's share was 25%, and Nvidia increased their share to 66.3%, which is, as you all probably know, not the best result for our open source graphics stack. So all of the Linux and open source fans, or Linux and BSD actually, and maybe Haiku and you name it, all of you, if you need a graphic card, probably would be recommendable to support AMD. And like myself, also of course we purchased here cheap entry-level RX 560, but at least it was dirt cheap for amazing open source support. So thumbs up at least for AMD there for their ongoing open source driver efforts. So the next news, unsurprisingly, still graphic related. We sorted this a little bit. So the next not that amazing news for AMD is actually that Nvidia announced and introduced here a completely budget card, completely dirt cheap, I would say, for some 300 or something. I think was here the list price of 240 pounds, 280 euro, $250. Oh my god. At least they write it here. So this is of course not the most amazing news for AMD, especially taking this in combination with the previous news of declining market share. And yeah, but if you, the good news is entry-level cards become cheaper and more powerful than ever. And yeah, you need to probably evaluate for yourself what kind of performance you need and driver support, open source or Windows or not. And it is maybe also, I should, as we already not paid advertisement, but in general in favor of AMD, support AMD for the open source efforts. It is also noteworthy, I guess, if you are in Mac OS of all operating systems, then I think, at least I heard, Nvidia cards are not the best option for your Hackintosh. So if you are building your Hackintosh out of PC components or run this virtualized in KVM, then maybe for Apple's native macOS drivers, AMD is also favorable for built-in and seamless macOS support. And welcome everyone else in the audience. Paul's Computer Lab, Danny, welcome to our weekly IT news. Then, leaving the crowded graphic card sector, not sure if this is the very best site. I usually try to find an English site because this news was also discovered on German websites, but I didn't want to present you a German site of everything. Serious crypto flaw found in Swiss Australian e-voting systems. Actually, now that I present the news, I realize Australian did. Somehow I overread this. So the point is, some security researchers have found some huge security vulnerability in the Swiss e-voting system, and this should probably be of interest of all of you. Actually, now that I see it, actually these names ring a bell. Maybe I should have read the news here a little bit more detail before presenting them, because obviously Matthew Green I recognize here. So shortly after the Swiss Post announced their bug bounty program cryptography experts Sarah Jamie Lewis and Matthew Green pointed out that there are some potential security issues in the cryptographic functions, and I have unfortunately not yet had the time to study this in detail, but the summary here and on other news sites was that this allows massive manipulation of votes. Obviously not the best thing for a democracy and the electronic voting coming close to you. This kind of things is of course exactly what all the hackers of the Chaos Computer Club probably want for already maybe 2 decades or so, I guess. And things we should always keep in mind, not to think here all this web-based or similar voting systems are always top-notch security. Often someone apparently just slaps there some pieces together and then they might not be the very safest. I also remember some talks and presentations of the Chaos Communication Club or Chaos Computer Club that there were also huge issues found previously in American machines, that they were not locked, you could remove hard drives and things like this. They were not even encrypted, you could just pull the hard drive or CF card out and read all the data and stuff and similar things. So yeah, things just to keep in mind to look out for if you are interested in your state's voting system, and also to point out to your politicians to keep things safe and not trust salesmen of IT companies that they have the most amazing and most secure voting system, because more often than not they actually don't have. So yeah. And then the next thing I compiled as usual from, just need to scroll the news a little bit away from Slashdot, as so often, Cringley's next 2019 predictions. Apparently someone who often makes predictions. Maybe you know him already, recognize him. His latest prediction is only 3.5 cloud players will survive, and we will later see a related news to that actually at the end of our news today. So he predicts that let me just summarize this here. The virtual private cloud solution based on open source using Linux will change the Internet as a Service cloud space to VPC only during 2019. So VPC is of course virtual private cloud, something as if this is the same term as I usually promote here, to host your services yourself and things like this. Similar what I say, especially as cloud services more often than not also in Internet of Things and other related things often go away. You buy devices, alarm devices and stuff like this. Even Google, they are not satisfied with their numbers, sales numbers, advertising numbers, and they just close services. Just the usual risk when you use cloud services. And so he seems to believe that IBM Cloud and Oracle Cloud are doomed to fail, and Alibaba will only survive because of strong Chinese presence. And the editor here summarizing this notes that in his opinion these are safe predictions, but he comments on Google Cloud as somewhat controversial. His comments on Google Cloud are somewhat controversial. After AWS, Alibaba, Microsoft, all the others will eventually disappear. And so not really sure if I can agree with exactly this kind of picks, but of course it is. We had the live stream yesterday discussing open source, income and big companies, and certainly the trends that richer become richer, poorer become poorer, and yeah, bigger IT companies become bigger. No surprise really there. And I in general, as per previous videos and live streams, recommend hosting your data yourself. In my opinion, I would not trust this cloud stuff to eventually disappear. And even if you get some 4 weeks notice, it's of course then a little bit a stressful situation if you get the announcement that your cloud service provider is shutting down and you need to urgently back up your data. And we had this already with thermostats and things like this not working anymore, or even light bulbs. You know, you buy light bulbs and camera systems and then they stop working after a year or two. So yeah, just the usual things to keep in mind. And as we had this long live stream yesterday, just general ideas and discussions to think about for the future of IT developments. Then a little bit funny note, I read this on a news site, but then saved here the original article from Ubisoft, of course. Initial tile updates, so this is the official support reference here on their support website, as you see from the URL. Initial tile updates for the Division 2. Not really interested in this game. Maybe it's awesome, maybe not, no idea. If you are a gamer, maybe leave us, let us know in the comments below what you think. But what I found noteworthy, and in general I find a really sad trend, is that here the launch day patch size, download size is 48 to 52 megabytes here for Xbox One and PC, and PS4 is even, let's see, it's still actually it's the same size. Why do they make it so complicated? And of course the hard drive installation 88 to 92 gigabyte. Sorry, here it's already so huge sizes, you already mispronounce this. Yeah, games 90 gigabyte, crazy game sizes in my opinion. We played the vintage retro SimCity edition for the anniversary the other week, and yeah, there your game fitted on a 1 megabyte floppy, and here we have 9,200 floppies of game, and that the patch to download is such a huge, massive size. I really wonder. I think it's probably not only textures and sound data. I think they may be also doing something a little bit stupid, like not really data compressing this stuff, or they change common files and header files, and they have very small binary code changes all over the place that delta updates do not even help much, because they effectively patch all the executables, libraries, and you name it. Not really sure, even then, when you change a global header file and have changes all over your binary, not really sure how you get to download patch sizes of 50 gigabyte, because this is on top of what you buy, as I understand. So if you buy a PS4 Blu-ray and install it, then your launch day patch, apparently, as far as I know, is the size. So what is the point of a Blu-ray release anyway if you need to download? And by the way, this is even when I have not really many latest games, but the few games I have, for example, Project Cars, as usual, no paid advertisement here, but just what I purchased for personal fun and used for reviewing ThinkPads and such here in previous videos. And when I download Project Cars on a new review unit, I easily download also 30 gigabyte or something, maybe 40, plus minus, give or take, something like that. And even this is already a little bit uncomfortable, especially if you're not on the greatest internet. Of course, no, we recently upgraded from 200 to 500 Mbit here. Let's see how the download sizes are then, because over 200 Mbit, I think the download was usually for sure half an hour or an hour or stuff, and this is over a very fast line. So if you're on a not as fast line, you easily probably download a whole day on your DSL line, or even if you live on the countryside and don't have the most outstanding broadband connection, probably much longer than a day. So not really sure what the companies are thinking, especially if these are incremental updates. So yeah, actually, speaking of which, I forgot I wanted to actually compile Windows update change. What do we have, March or something? Now that I say this, there was also a change in the Windows update, which I personally also have huge problems with. Most of the Windows updates here somehow fail after a year or so. Really annoying. I usually have to reset then VMs to the previous snapshot. And not sure if this is here the real news, probably not, because there was in the news this week also that finally Microsoft allows you to delay Windows updates, which I personally also really wondered, because what I don't understand, I understand that Microsoft, with all their security vulnerabilities and viruses, needs to push updates to users. I really don't understand why they don't allow users the choice, at least for a single day, because I personally find it highly uncomfortable. I want to get work done, start the VM for some Windows testing, and the first thing it's doing, it's installing all the updates from the last month, and then often it's hanging for me, maybe because I only started once a month. And wherever this news is, you probably hear some Patch Tuesday, but probably not in this news. But this is a similar news with Windows updates. Also, when you install Windows from scratch, at least for me, usually it is downloading then quite some massive updates for an hour or two. And especially for me, what I've seen in our limited use of Windows, I have usually seen then really many, like approaching hundreds of incremental data updates, which obviously install in an hour or two or even longer, especially if you have an older Core i3 or entry-level something, ultra slim, whatsoever, thermal throttling with only a core or two and things like this. So yeah, I really have to wonder, especially the points I wonder is, why is Microsoft as such a big company not joining this data updates together, that instead of applying hundreds of small incremental updates, they download a handful. And I think someone told me already they do this, but somehow not for me, not always. And the next thing is why the whole Windows, even Windows users and developers and this other YouTube channels, you know, like Linus's YouTube channel and such, they are even making fun of Windows updates and such. And these are Windows users. And why can they not have a simple updates are ready? Do you want to install them now or later? Or even do not show them as verbosely, but when the user closes apps and really has the desktop and not an open app like a game or PowerPoint, how can it be so difficult for such a big company like Microsoft to sort their update situation better? I have not really understanding. If I would be the update manager there, I wouldn't do it like this. But yeah, then we mentioned that as well. The next breaking news, so to say, is Linux 5.1 might pick up support for using persistent memory as system RAM. Persistent memory is, of course, this faster and more random access than classic SSD flash, but nearly as fast as memory, but persistent. So the content is not disappearing as soon as you cut the power. And I think so one popular implementation is Intel's Optane, obviously, that probably many of you heard about. If not, this is their 3D cross-point technology that unfortunately is not the most cheap. So their memory storage is currently rather small, in the range of 16 or 32 gigabyte or so, and not the most cheap. And actually, when you look on other people's benchmarks, the performance is not that much better than flash for normal use. What is much better is random access performance, because they do not need to rewrite huge flash blocks as a whole. And this is the same, I think Hewlett-Packard also has some resistant memory research program that they always say. I think even Hewlett-Packard, I heard or remember, they have some really huge persistent computing research project, much more than just memory. So what this is supporting here, so there are patches floating around for Linux to support this as system RAM, which is of course really interesting. Also, I think the future Intel Optane modules are apparently insertable into regular DIMM sockets, maybe, I heard. Not yet seen this personally. Maybe there are already some specs out or something. And the huge change of this is, of course, not this patch. I did not find the most noteworthy and outstanding. However, I wanted to bring this into the news today because this could potentially change computing as a whole. Because right now, of course, the boot process of a vintage PC and smartphones and such, even smartphones and embedded systems, are modeled after a classic PC boot sequence, or probably mainframe and such boot sequence of some BIOS, always loading the operating system and support applications and libraries and stuff into the system memory from their persistent permanent previously magnetic storage, or punch cards for that matter. And what is a big change here is that this persistent memory could change operating systems entirely if you do not need to always load the OS and applications, but have an instant suspend and resume from this persistent memory. This could not only decrease suspend and resume cycles to the fractions of milliseconds and also change computing as a whole. You could have much more differently written programs, maybe, so there's like Smalltalk back in the day, programs that you edit and develop with editing the source code and immediately seeing the result and having it persistently in memory. There's certainly a huge potential for research projects and innovation if you are into this sort of thing, and certainly really interesting times, and the short-term effect for sure could be totally different, like instant on booting. And the challenge of course in this is that, as probably many of you have already experienced, especially with ACPI, things might not be as stable. This is also why 2 decades ago, or at least 15 years ago, we got PowerPC, iBooks and such for seamless Linux, suspend and resume, much more stable than APC or what this was. This is advanced power control stuff, or APM actually, it was advanced power management or so. APM back in the day, the successor is ACPI, and back in the day, 15 years ago, this was highly unstable, at least with Linux in 2003 and such. So we got ourselves iBooks and PowerBooks just for the reason to have completely stable Linux suspend and resume. And there you see the difference between just programming it yourself in Linux in your kernel and having control over it, and relying on buggy and complex BIOS implementations from PC vendors that apparently not always know what they are doing, or at least only implementing it trial and error until it works with Windows. And the challenge with this, why the reason I mention this is, the challenge is to keep the system stable over a time of years. And so, because when you have really persistent memory and you have really a new paradigma of having programs really running persistently for weeks and months or years, then of course corruption with off by one buffer over underrun, they are, because now today a small mistake in Firefox may not be noticeable because just some memory clobbering here and there may only accumulate over a day and maybe Firefox crashes at the end of the day. But with really persistent applications, also databases and such, of course the risk of corruption, buffer over underruns, becomes a much greater problem for this long-term running persistent memory application. So just some random thoughts here from me to watch out for in case you're interested in this kind of topics. Another change this week in LLVM, our favorite low-level virtual machine and compiler project, as used in CLang and Mesa for 3D OpenGL stuff and such, is new research patches from, was it University somewhere Switzerland or so, I thought. Anyway, so there are new patches for improved GPU SPMD-zation, and as far as I understood this, I think this means compiling regular C++ code with OpenMP specification that you normally would vectorize for use on multiple threads of your CPU, of your massive parallel multi-core multi-thread system. And this, as far as I've seen and understood, correct me if I'm wrong, is for offloading such kind of code to your GPU, which is of course amazing. The problem is of course that most OpenMP code usually is a little bit too complex, I think, to run on this relatively simple GPUs, because GPUs really prefer non-conditional massive matrix multiplication and such code, and not this conditional if then else and more random indexing left and right and such. So this is probably, at least my naive impression. Again, leave in the comments below what is your impression, or if you have inside knowledge there. This is a great challenge of this, because GPUs are simply so much more simple. And this is really nice to see, because what this allows is really cutting down the cost and development time for writing massive parallel code for GPUs, because if you do this otherwise right now with CUDA or OpenCL, you need to specifically target this more, and this of course here allows to write in more regular C and C++ code instead of having to resolve to writing this very specific OpenMP code that is not as normal as your normal C and C++ code is. So really nice to see, really wondering. So they have, of course, as usual, some performance improvements. And you see, as usual, comments, ideas, and criticism are welcome, just like on our YouTube channel. And yeah, as usual, this is why we prefer this open source stuff. Then everyone can work on this and research at universities and such, and makes this better for all sorts of things, from C-Lang to Mesa for our OpenGL, Vulkan 3D open source stack and such. So if you're interested in this, or you use this commercially for your data center and things, then maybe something worth taking a look into. Then, similar to the news previously, our news of cloud software solutions, 3.5 cloud ones that are predicted to survive Dropbox, is limiting free accounts to 3 linked devices. Usual changes of company culture, and go to the comments in the audience not to delay them so long. So Denny writes, so as I suspect you too would have the latest kernel. You ask this because of C-Lang or something unrelated? Yes, of course T2 has the latest kernel, but of course not the latest testing kernel. We have a couple of dropped frames, but nothing too serious. So as you might or might not see, actually, okay, we have it on the screen, so then you should see it. So even testing here, the latest or nearly latest 5.0.2 build here from last night, at the end of the last live stream. So of course latest kernel, but not the latest release candidate and stuff, because we want stuff to work. And 2 decades ago we usually have run production, not production release candidate stuff, but also stuff was breaking left and right. So not so, even as I mentioned in the other live stream or such, when we update T2 kernels nowadays, we always wait for the first point release, because regressions, so I usually keep the previous production kernel on the, and update those stable release patches and update to the latest and greatest new major kernel like 5.0. I only updated when the first 5.0.1 patch was available, just to make sure to have the most grave and latest, greatest important bug fix applied there. Because regressions, as you've seen, the 8-channel ADAT card and our lovely TG3 network driver here. So more comments in the audience. Sakat writes, was the Vulkan game engine for Linux? Vulkan is not a game engine. Vulkan is a API, software API, similar to OpenGL, DirectX and CUDA or Apple's Metal and things like this. So Vulkan is an 3D API to interface a graphic driver not only on Linux, it's a cross-platform standard like OpenGL and OpenCL, and it is more lightweight than OpenGL. So in many ways it is a successor of OpenGL, and for more fine-grained, detailed and lower latency, less overhead and more minimalistic, and also no fixed function. So Vulkan has also done away with a fixed function OpenGL rendering pipeline and is only, as far, at least as far as I remember and I've seen, only for more general purpose programmable GPUs of today. And Danny writes, nice, I would then need to patch the video driver for the Quadro on my laptop. You mean probably with a binary only Nvidia driver, I guess, or something like that. So yeah, just a general reminder that your cloud services are changing on a regular basis. Might go away or not, might be purchased, like GitHub by Microsoft and Dropbox. I'm actually not sure whether they purchased recently or not. There were always talks, but off the top of my head, not really sure who owns them right now or if they're still independent. But this is of course the limitation or danger of cloud services. Someone else has your data, maybe encrypted, maybe not, maybe changing your account details, especially if you use it for free. and similar things. And also, as people predict, maybe not all cloud providers may survive or may not, or we will see. In general, a great fan of hosting your stuff yourself, then you don't rely on others people and your data is not getting into other people's hands, or at least if it does, then it's your own fault. And last but not least, you see today we went a little bit faster through the news. I need to see later if this is more preferable or not, because the last news live streams became a little bit long if I talk too much about each point. The last point of today's compiled news is Fan uses AI to remaster Star Trek Deep Space Nine in HD. Yay, of course. Thumbs up for this effort, obviously, especially as we are science fiction fans here. And the thing is, so I guess I, as usual, didn't really have time to go into much detail here. Could probably, will we get copyright infringement streaming this here? Maybe, maybe not, maybe. Actually, we could probably play this here, or at least try to. And it's of course funny that I maximize this and it is maximizing in a way that I can this not, because right now the fun of having window managers that are not multi-screen aware or multi-display monitor aware. Actually, I think maybe this is the update. Actually, I think it's probably the update that someone like Danny recommended me recently. You know, remember this new black box? Because I think this is probably using some new Prozent extension, because previously this was not honoring the full screen mode correctly. And but by the way, we could probably also just open this here and have it larger, because until recently my black box here was not honoring this full screen thing, and I could move the window around. So that is a new thing. Thanks Danny for this update, that full screen now works more amazingly. And so original and SD, or actually original SD and full HD, and you probably get the idea and can watch this yourself if you want to. I'm guessing they are probably using machine learning, some neural network or so, to guess the pixels, to predict there where some sharpness should be. Let's see, do we have here things in the summary? But what I can add, however, and as usual, not a paid advertisement here, but if you want to support us aside from watching the videos and joining us on Patreon for all the open source efforts, you can also use the Amazon affiliate links under the videos. And for example, I personally have the Blu-ray remastering, the full HD remastering of Star Trek Next Generation, and of course it's super sharp on Blu-ray. Obviously, that is what we have PS3s for here, that we also need to continue with, obviously there on the corner of the news stream here. And the point is that Star Trek Next Generation was as far as I remember, Next Generation was the last recorded on analog tape. And this analog tape or analog film allows, because analog obviously has a higher resolution, only in the resolution of this film grain, this chemical substrate, and that is higher than SD. So what they have done in the 80s when they were filming Star Trek Next Generation was filming it analog and then filming this later off the analog film for their TV broadcasting. And this is why, because they had this higher resolution, like an analog resolution of film tape, that they could remaster this in full HD. And obviously it looks amazing. And the funny thing is, they even could have, because originally it was 4:3 aspect ratio for the TV back in the 80s. And what they could have done, what I've seen there in the making of or something, they mentioned they could have theoretically remastered this in 16:9 aspect ratio. The only reason they have not done this is because it would have been even more efforts, because they had at the sides, because they knew that the sides of 16:9 they would not be used on the TV. They had not always all the scenery built, and so the spaceship and stuff was not, there might be wood standing and a microphone hanging, and they would have had more efforts to Photoshop, or actually no, paid advertisement to GIMP with open source, obviously, to GIMP all the microphone and people. There are apparently maybe even sometimes people standing with a notepad and paper trail and such. And this is only due to this, because this would have been even more efforts to Photoshop, GIMP, all the stuff away there. Otherwise, we would have even had a 16:9 re-release of Star Trek Next Generation. That would, of course, have been even more amazing. And the thing is, what I learned then, back in the day, when some couple of years ago I purchased here, invested into this STNG Blu-ray release, that the TV shows after that, the Star Trek TV shows, were produced digital. This is why they cannot do this with Next Generation or with Deep Space Nine or Voyager, because it was simply recorded already back in the day digital, and now you would think digital is more amazing. But in this case it is not, because digital has obviously a fixed resolution, unlike analog film, so you can't just make this there, invent there more pixels, unless obviously, as this fan apparently has done, trained a neural network. Not sure how fake this is or how real, but I've seen similar papers already. So instead of just upscaling this and linear or bicubic interpolating the pixels there, I'm pretty sure some trained neural networks there on similar. For example, you could train a neural network on another show where a TV show like even the latest, like let's say the latest Star Trek, what is the latest? Destiny? Is it Destiny? Something. You get the idea. No, Destiny. Was it Destiny? I even watched it the other day. Whatever. So the latest show of Star Trek that is available maybe even in 4K or something, and then downscale it with a normal linear interpolation, that you create an SD version of your 4K or at least full HD version, and train a neural network in such a way to reconstruct pixels, at least of some sorts. Of course, it will not always be the original pixel, obviously, but some relatively well-looking, sharpish contour like of some sorts, as you probably see from this demonstration. As usual, this kind of research always fascinating, especially for back in the day shows that, in my opinion, are most likely more amazing than the currently. Is it Discovery? I think it's, did I say Discovery? I think it's Discovery. Correct me if I'm wrong. So yeah, interesting research, also stuff that you could do that you already heard. If you did not knew precisely, maybe we can also make some demonstration of neural networks another day. This is a quick news recap. This time a little bit more of a sprint here to keep this more short and interesting, because obviously not only did myself find those streams too long, also some people commented they might be a little bit too long. So this is what we tried this week to make this slightly faster. And is there another scene that we can keep here? So with this, I guess we can switch to, yeah, maybe this looks nice for the backdrop here. So, and as you can see, desktop Linux in 2019, everything works amazingly, not only YouTube, but also watching video, hardware encoding video, as long as a TG3 driver, but this is Broadcom. What do we expect from Broadcom? Obviously nothing too amazing. No surprise there. So thanks God today, thanks the magic of the Linux kernel, today we did not have any dropout, but I pre-trained the TG3, I flood pinged Heise and Google, and then took the interface up and down and up again, and I had the feeling this sometimes helped a little bit, so far thumbs up. Or maybe they fixed an TG3 regression in Linux 5. So I hope you enjoyed this quick news summary and found this interesting. If we can stay on here for a couple of minutes, discuss your feedback. If you have any questions, answers and comments as usual, and as usual with the amazing YouTube notifications, the most people tune in when we are done with a live stream. But of course you can rewind and watch it later in the archive on demand. But as usual, we can also discuss here a little bit longer if there's any newsworthy news to discuss or questions and answers. And welcome everyone who joined recently. Go in, and this Vulkan was Steam Links engine or something. legacy binary is working. So you then you probably with legacy binary driver, you probably mean the Nvidia binary driver with legacy, I guess. We theoretically have a package, but as usual, I didn't use it. It's probably 10 years old, needs probably an update. But again, this is what we do the YouTube videos for. You can also update this yourself, only compiling. Well, it's a little bit tricky, but not the most tricky if you want to update this, because this kernel packages, this kind of packages, but it's already prepared. So you can probably reuse it, what we have in T2, because this kind of packages are a little bit special because they hook into the compilation of the Linux kernel, because obviously with a monolithic kernel that is the Linux kernel and the ever-changing APIs and ABIs, you need to compile the third-party module specifically while you build the kernel with exactly the same source tree for all the matching API and ABI and such, and also module versioning and such. But module versioning and symbol versioning aside, even if you disable this, it will not usually work and crash and burn if it's not compiled with the same structural defines of APIs and such. Saccard writes something about Ham8 with Nova 3D. If you can drop more comments about this, if you want to share some more details about that. So yeah, as usual, also when you watch this in the archive on demand, let us know what was most interesting. Would be interesting to know what kind of news you like most, news, performance, Linux, Windows, IT. I hope you don't ask me for SAP and Oracle news, because we are not neither into Oracle or SAP nonsense. So yeah, but probably there was something for everyone, from games to high performance OpenCL/OpenMP/LLVM work. Somehow today not the most comments. Of course, as usual, when I already talk 1.5 hours, then we have 1.5 hour comments, and when I talk through the news shortly, then we don't have questions and answers. I still have, if we have already 9 people gathered, most people will not watch the stream to the end anyway. I still have GNOME updates to do. So theoretically, if you're interested, we can also finish our GNOME updates from the other live stream, because obviously GNOME updates, as we have already 9 people, and as usual, more people usually join more than less at the end of the stream. And the reoccurring reminder, if you want to be notified by YouTube, you need to click this notification bell next to the subscribe button, otherwise you don't get notifications in time because reasons. Let's see, did we even probably not compile GNOME terminal, because I think, so from now on, as we have some people in the audience, we still have stuff to do as usual. So if you want to stay with us, and also more YouTube comments, because obviously YouTube comments and yeah, as usual, stuff to do. So you can also watch me do some IT work after the IT news, because GNOME updates, as you know, we want to make desktop Linux even greater. Our Amiga software. That sounds interesting, right? Because Amiga forever. And for GNOME we have here still some packages to add. This was looking for some, alright, this was shell search provider, because obviously the more packages the better. So let's Google our GNOME packages, that dbus interface. The funny thing is, of course, always to get the stuff working stable. This was already a thing back in the day, that then you have dbus and all the search stuff to working in tandem together to actually function properly. File not found, requested, wait a second, requested, maybe we can actually disable this, especially as we do not yet know. Did I delete this already, or actually some stuff there? Gnome shell, wait a second, what are we even? Gnome shell, do we even somehow, why did this not ring a bell? Thanks for the reminder. Always a little bit not seeing the forest behind the trees or something like that. So FTP gnome org from the other day, and let's see if we have. It's of course slightly funny that for GNOME terminal you need GNOME shell, but the more stuff you can plug together, probably the better. The open source Credo GNOME shell we don't have, so let's package this, and probably, as we have so much more stuff here, here's GNOME shell and extensions. Probably want to automate this sometime soon. This is just from the other day here. Like the KDE stuff, making a KDE package. Maybe actually we do this here now and copy here our, was it KDE package, and make here a GNOME package. And similar to this, let's see what we have here. Copy SVN, copy GNOME 2, and let's copy something like, why not GNOME terminal as a template as usual to the new package name. And if you don't know what we do here, you can also watch the previous live stream of updating and packaging GNOME and KDE. One was, however, 7 hours, the other one we kept shorter because 7 hours. So let's see if this works already. Copy link location. And what do we do here? Copy GNOME terminal to the package thing. And let's see if this is doing already something. GNOME package. Wait a second, did we? Oh, this was in there, okay. Then let's try that. What is it doing? It's even doing something, you know. Great fans of automation here, because otherwise it's too boring to manually create 100 packages. And let's see here, by the way, I think this was a YouTube comment. Okay, I posted this. As I said, what is more open than open source? Developing your Linux distribution in plain sight here, open on the internet. And Piotr commented here something below our previous live stream, just checking what's going there in our comment section. And the package does, alright, maybe we should have copied something. We probably substituted all the, oh, wait a second, we copied this in GNOME, this was, and KDE, this was of course our existing typo stuff, so revert, subversion revert GNOME shell defs infinity. So then there should probably be, oh no, it's still there. Yeah. And let's fix this because we need this in, obviously in GNOME. And this is only named GNOME 2, GNOME 2 for vintage reasons here. We probably simply rename this to GNOME and or something, because as we have realized, most of these packages are still the same, just many updated and many new and some deprecated. And this is why you also always usually want to automatically substitute this. Here I did not substitute this here automatically, and of course in the open of the YouTube live stream we immediately overlooked this, that there were occurrences of KDE in there. And another YouTube comment of someone complaining that it's Denglish. German English. Maybe leave me in the comments below what you think about this. Is this English here amazing enough? Or do we need to work on our native English skills? And yes, of course, as we expected, we substituted here all the T tags away. So gnome something, actually gnome shell, whatever. And let's see. But most likely we will miss a couple of dependencies because many dependencies. Let's see, do we have comments and G5? I mean, so what did we get here in our audience? If you know Pascal, he's pushing G5, what, 32 Quake playing, same time. Fun stuff. So, what did we get here? Okay, probably it's fine, don't mind about English. Understand you very well, that is good to hear. The haters usual hate, no matter what. I'm fully aware, just pointing out here the question. So this most likely, of course, is using our amazing and Mensen, and was it Mensen and Ninja? Where did we recently add this? We recently added this to some, what could that have been? We added this to, let's see, the subversion, because I've not yet committed this. Usually commit early, and I should also commit this early, because otherwise I will just accidentally remove all the stuff here. So let's see, what did we add here? Grep starting with capital A. Maybe something like, actually we need to come, so probably this one here. So yeah, sure enough. Oops. Let's copy this to whatever we added there. Package gnome, that was gnome shell. And build again. And this reminds me, we also need more automatisms for detecting Mensen and native dependency. Lib-equal. Sorry, it was poor Mac G5 full. It was 48 Quake same time. No problem. Here, many dependencies, exactly the reason why I didn't continue this, and now we have this package script mostly updated to pull this in automatically, because who wants to package this 200 packages? So this was lib-equal or something, but as usual, lib-equal. Sorry, I forgot, Danny, where are you from? Was it something like, I think you wrote it earlier already. So where's lib-equal? And then you see how do distributions get 10,000 packages. This happens naturally, packaging all this stuff. And yeah, you DuckDuckGo for Google, but okay, let's try. DuckDuckGo finds this. Show here forum. Fedora, this is, you can find it at YouTube. What do you link here? Which repository for missing packages? Yeah, lib-equal. Let's see, by the way, I wanted to check, but you see, on my backup, and they might decide to support you to a bit regarding users and willing to pay us, but it is overall attitude of a lot of people, including many OS developers. It's a hobby, so I'm not paying or requesting. So a lot of feedback there from here, amazing comments. This is why we do this here, to spread words influence in a positive way. And you can read these comments there on the previous videos, obviously. Great discussions. And so lib, and I wanted to say we do this here for education, and okay, so amazing X11 clipboard system. And your min page, yeah, thank you very much. DuckDuckGo finds there you recognize an amazing search engine that finds the first result on Oracle documentation. So yeah, unfortunately sometimes we have to resolve to other competing search engines, although we don't want. And then it's Debian. It's slightly funny that there is not a direct upstream link, so, or is it? Let's see. Let's see, maybe we have a surprise and we have packaged this already. Someone, no, unfortunately not. So where do we have? This libik. Yeah, the problem is you paste links, but I need an upstream URL. I don't need, this is why I can't package here something from Debian. I need Entwicklerinformation. Why is this, by the way, exactly the thing I don't like to get this in German? Yes, homepage. Let's see. Hey, GNOME. Ah, it's evolution. Ah, that makes sense. And where is the download of that? Get the source code of, hello, where is libe something? Yeah, you see the idea. It's slightly inconvenient if we need to Google all over the internet about this. This actually says site not found, but that might be due to the YouTube does not like links with stuff, does not properly parse all kinds of links. So evolution here somewhere, where's there future planning overview? Let's see, maybe here utilities, probably developer GNOME, something. Yeah, you see here we get something, or utilities actually, but even this, so this is exactly data server. That could be data, but by the way, maybe we have this. So here we have evolution, webcall, data server. There we have something, might need an update, so because a decade, and I wonder, I probably don't see who is in the chat. Do I see who is in the chat? And it's of course funny or interesting and nice nonetheless. We get the most comments after our news show when we continue with our Linux work. By the way, I will probably out of principle, by the way, maybe we should actually stop it here, because I don't want, out of principle, not have this videos too long, because then people don't watch it. I think usually people, when they see 2-hour videos, they already don't open it. And this is why, let's see, is this already updated? This is why we should not continue so long here. This is actually updated. Let's try to build this then. Missing only of, probably not yet try to build this. Yeah, this is trying actually not too much, but CMonkey, we also don't want this. This is a problem when stuff links to Firefox and then it's pulling in CMonkey or stuff from a decade ago. So depth equals none, and let's see what happens. And great Amiga fans in the audience. Yeah, Amiga we did not hit, but maybe one day for some YouTube video reasons we might get this. So we have here, but this, no, actually this already once, wait a second, is this, oh wait, this was the wrong. Also helps to look into the right log file. What does this want? Performing something, fail to find Kerberos use. Yeah, thank you very much. Don't really want to compile this now. Is this even, let's see what this is. This is autoconf or evolution, because for sure the problem is also that this kind of things are always a pain, because actually here's already some fun stuff. Actually, why is this defined so strange? Is this even, maybe this is even, this is already calling Meson or something else. That is CMake. Ah, okay. So this would be CMake opts, then we need to add this to CMake opts, obviously, and not to, then probably all the stuff here is obsolete, but we adapt this another day. So this was CMake opt. Let's see what happens now. And yes, this is slightly error prone here and time consuming, but this is just when you, on the plus side, we saved ourselves this hassle for decades, and it's just one-time overhead of doing this here once. I had once NSPR headers. Is this mandatory or NSPR? Looks like this is mandatory. Yeah, this is some Netscape portable runtime. This will be a pain, then like Firefox or something, but who knows what precisely. Actually, did we had here this as a single package for some reason? But actually, yeah, we have, let's, should we actually, but this is also super outdated for sure. Yeah, this is pulling this here from Mozilla something. You see, this is an never-ending story. This is why the KDE Qt stream was 7 hours and KDE was a little bit more self-contained. This GNOME stuff, as you see, has this all over the place. And what is the latest version here? 4.10 maybe. What do we have here? Maybe it is, oh no, there's actually 4.19. Then it's probably 4.20. Anyone or 4.20, 4.21. Thanks for this amazing sorting. This is actually super recent. Soon T2 will be the most up-to-date distribution. Thanks to your YouTube views and Patreon donations, much appreciated. Let's see what we get here for NSPR. Does this just work or maybe not? Actually works. Okay, let's see if we can compile this NSPR. But maybe you understand then why I started this YouTube streaming here, to have here some means to finance this, because otherwise I would still not update GNOME or KDE. And even though today we only earn $3 a day with this, still better than nothing. And of course it doesn't build, because why should it? So yeah, there goes that fun. They changed the directory layout, and as you see, this is super time consuming. Although I automate some stuff, you still need to look up this. Where is that coming from? This needs an update. This changed because you ever changing changes, obviously. And actually this is configured, so let's see if we can quickly make this to work. Sometimes we are lucky and we can tweak here stuff with just by the way, do we even need this? And let's see if was this directly in the top level directory of NSPR? Oh no, it was one more down. Okay, then we pre-conf probably NSPR. Yeah, but chances are this will still not build, because reasons, Java, JavaScript engine, other dependencies, you name it. But maybe we are lucky. And as usual, I've showed you on my build server, changes are accumulating of not yet compiling stuff. And you see even here with the GNOME updates, now we have 300 files touched, just the other live stream mostly. And hey, it compiled. Let's see if this was it. Data server something finds it, or if we need to guide it. Let's see, where did this prefix install it, this NSPR stuff. I just actually installed it in user. Then it probably has a chance to find it, but it still fails for maybe other reasons. Why does this not include files NSPR? Let's see where this is coming from. NSPR. Let's actually include NSPR H. Why does Evolution Data Center not find this? R includes to, maybe it wants to have this includes directly. The wonders of open source with this kind of stuff, I always wonder. I mean, our open source stuff is mostly small. When there's something not working, then we are just a small team, but this huge project that they cannot just compile when you just install them in reasonable paths, then I also don't know what's up with this data server conf. And does this here even have an NSPR header thing? Actually not. So, and you see the amazing syntax here. This thing wants capital D equals off, Manson or Mason or what it's called wants lowercase d and false and true or yes and no or something. So yeah, just the fun of each build system wants it his own way. And this is for now, this is, sometimes I do it for this because I'm not yet sure if this will work. So user include NSPR maybe. This stuff I also need to test because trial and error is much faster than reading this huge configuration glue there, obviously. And then I usually trial and error much faster than reading the source and figuring it out. And are we getting, oh, this failed already because it's still, no, wait a second, we built the wrong project. This comes from Control R reverse searching the wrong thing. And of course it fails because reasons probably include dears. What does it still want? Still not found apparently. With NSS includes, or is it another thing? Oh, wait a second. Actually it found it. It's the next thing, NSS. Okay, so much to that. Or NSPR. Let's see, maybe we don't even need it there then. This comes from reading, not really reading error log files here on YouTube. Let's see, we have probably NSS also. But there you see, why is this stuff so huge? Because everything needs Firefox or Chromium or WebKit or NSPR and then LLVM, and one thing comes to another, and JavaScript engine there and Node.js on the other side, and then you have hundreds of megabytes of software just for some GNOME terminal or GNOME terminal, GNOME shell. And by the way, the fun thing is to tell you something new and interesting, just that I don't like this HTTP URL there at all. Let's see, can we make this HTTP, because FTP is really old. So security, Mozilla. And what people could actually do if they wanted is use our T2 stuff to also compile this for IRIX and stuff. Of course, huge efforts, but if you wanted to, you could, and share here all our configuration glue stuff. So security release, security, so release they don't have anymore, I think. And thanks for helping here. And we have here now release NSS, releases is here. And here's some NSS. It's also funny, you see this NSPR that we just packaged had a completely different directory structure. This here has capitalized names, probably for some good reason. So we have here 312. What is now 3? Do we have something for anyone? 343. What is the date? Do they give us a date for that? March. So this looks top of the line. And then we probably want to copy this link location and NSN. So, okay, let's see what we get here. Makes this HTTP or something, because that is much nicer than FTP. Not a fan, because sometimes for me FTP doesn't even work on some data center because some strange FTP hiccup reasons. And yeah, you see more dependencies, more packages, more updates. And also this kind of directory change structure, obviously we can't scan automatically there at night for our nightly tracker. This is why this stuff is not getting automatically updated, because obviously paths changed here and there, and obviously another subdirectory, so it's 2 subdirectories down, and not really easy to automatically match there. And okay, set standard recompression. Time for hydration, because hydration important. And let's emerge that and see what happens. Probably, wait a second, why did we not? Ah, this is correct. Yeah, I hope you found this news interesting and learned something. The stream is approaching my maximum limit for this kind of main channel streams. As usual, I hope you enjoyed it, learned something, found it interesting. Don't forget to share, like and subscribe. And don't forget that we have a second channel for future more live streams, so this more random content will later go there for consistency and not having too many notifications on our main channel. And with this, I thank you very much for joining here. Wish you a good day or night, and I hope to see you soon for the next videos and live streams to come. Yeah, welcome, and hope to see you soon too. Have a good night, have a good day, and see you next time.